Thunder shattered the night as Roderick Beaumont, his frame a colossus of unyielding muscle and shadowed resolve, hurtled through the undergrowth, the metallic tang of blood and betrayal fueling his primal fury. In that visceral instant, with claws extended and amber eyes ablaze, he descended upon the treacherous form of his kin's betrayer, the air thick with the promise of retribution that could either salvage his fractured legacy or doom the fragile souls he now cherished. If this clash of beasts and broken oaths seizes your spirit, subscribe now, for the truths unearthed here will reshape empires and hearts alike. Cressida Thorne huddled in the mud-slicked ravine, her breath a ragged symphony against the storm's roar, as the monstrous silhouette of her pursuer loomed, knife gleaming like a fong in the moonlight. She clutched the hidden talisman, her defiance a fragile shield against the inevitable strike, knowing one whisper could summon salvation or seal her end. Yet in this precipice of peril, where loyalty clashed with lineage, the Alpha's vow echoed in her mind, binding her to a fate woven from whispers of the wild. The storm's wrath mirrored the turmoil in Roderick Beaumont's soul as he barreled through the decrepit doorway of the isolated chalet, his broad shoulders heaving with 5 years of pent fury, rain sluicing off his tailored overcoat like the blood he yearned to spill. Expecting a lair of sorcery or savagery, his amber-flecked gaze instead locked onto a slender figure in the dimly lit kitchen, a woman with defiant emerald eyes, her posture unyielding despite the tremor in her hands, shielding 2 wide-eyed children who bore his unmistakable lineage. The air crackled with unspoken accusations as the little ones clung to her, their voices piercing the chaos with cries of "Maman," that shattered his vengeful resolve into fragments of confusion and reluctant awe. Roderick's fingers, calloused from battles unseen, tightened into fists as the scent of his bloodline, mingled with hers, a blend of wild heather and aged ink, assaulted his heightened senses. He had traversed continents, forsaken alliances, and buried hollow griefs to reach this moment, only to find not a foe but a guardian whose fierce protectiveness rivaled his own primal instincts. "You dare harbor what is mine," his voice rumbled, a low thunder that vibrated the wooden beams, yet she stood firm, her chin lifted in quiet rebellion, the children burrowing deeper into her skirts. In the ensuing standoff, as lightning illuminated her resolute features, high cheekbones framed by tousled auburn locks, her simple attire speaking of humble tenacity, Roderick felt the first crack in his armored heart. This was no thief, she was a sentinel, her aura radiating the quiet strength of one who had mended what fate had fractured. But the shadows of his past enemies lingered, demanding he reclaim his heirs without mercy. Instead, he lowered his guard fractionally, his commanding presence softening as he murmured, "Explain yourself, before I tear this haven asunder." The woman's name was Cressida Thorne, a freelance illuminator of manuscripts, eking out existence in this rain-lashed enclave on the fringes of Edinburgh's misty outskirts. She had no inkling of the ancient pacts and Lupin legacies entwined with the twins she had nurtured since their abandonment at a remote orphanage 5 winters past. "They are my light," she declared, her voice steady despite the intrusion, as the children, Peregrine with his stormy gaze and Seraphina with her delicate resolve, peered at him warily. Roderick's beta, Etienne Duval, waited in the shadowed vehicle outside, his tablet glowing with dossiers that painted Cressida as unremarkable, no ties to the arcane, no whispers of malice. Yet the Alpha's instincts screamed otherwise, her scent wove into his heirs like threads in a tapestry, binding them in ways blood alone could not unravel. "We secure the perimeter," Roderick commanded into his concealed communicator, his eyes never leaving Cressida's. "No extraction, yet." As the night deepened, Roderick propped the splintered door with a nearby armoire, his movements deliberate, revealing forearms etched with faded runes that pulsed faintly in the lamplight. Cressida herded the twins to a corner, whispering assurances, her heart a tumultuous sea beneath her composed exterior. "You invade my sanctuary," she hissed, "but harm them, and I become the storm you fear." In that vulnerability, where worlds collided, his of shadowed dominions and hers of quiet endurance, Roderick glimpsed a path beyond vengeance. But the howl of distant threats echoed in his mind, urging caution. What would you do, faced with a stranger claiming your cherished wards? Comment below and share your thoughts. The truce formed uneasily, Roderick declaring his intent to remain, his security cadre acquiring adjacent dwellings under the guise of benevolence. Cressida, sensing the futility of resistance against his vast resources, imposed ground rules, no displays of dominance before the children, and repairs to the havoc he wrought. As he wielded tools with uncharacteristic humility, the first seeds of an improbable alliance took root, leaving the air charged with unspoken questions and the faint aroma of impending revelation. Weeks slipped by in the chalet with a rhythm that was both comforting and unnerving, a quiet tension woven through the hum of daily life. Each day added a page to the unspoken narrative between Roderick and Cressida, a story neither had chosen but both were living. The Alpha, his shoulders broad and commanding, was a man used to obedience and order, yet here in the modest warmth of her home, he was a stranger navigating a world without protocol or hierarchy. Morning light found him bristling at the clamor of the twins' laughter echoing through the small rooms, their tiny shoes tapping on wooden floors, the aroma of oat porridge curling into the corners. And yet, amid the chaos, he could not help but watch Cressida. Her care was meticulous, her patience endless, each braid in Seraphina's hair, each whispered lesson to Peregrine, each gentle correction delivered with kindness rather than command. She tended to their needs with an instinctual grace that reminded him, painfully, of all he had lost. Roderick's inner life churned beneath the surface of his polished exterior. His enterprises sprawled across continents, his power unquestioned in boardrooms and shadowed corridors alike, but wealth and influence could not fill the cavernous emptiness left by Genevieve's blaze, or the children he had never held. Cressida's presence breached that void, stirring desires he had long forbidden. Her laughter with the twins was a balm to his scarred heart, and her resilience challenged the rigid walls he had built around himself. The pull between them was subtle yet insistent, like a tide threatening to break against a dam. Even in the quietest moments, he was aware of the nuances of her world. Etienne, ever cautious, reminded him, "She is mortal, Alpha, fragile threads in our eternal weave." But Roderick, drawn to Cressida's fortitude, dismissed the warning. He observed her translating the ancient texts he had spent years chasing, the glow of her candlelight reflecting in her eyes, and felt a kinship deeper than circumstance. One rainy evening crystallized the intimacy between them. Peregrine approached Roderick, clutching a wooden puzzle, his tiny hands echoing the strength and shape of the Alpha's own. "Fix it?" he asked, eyes shining with trust. Roderick knelt beside him, massive frame folding with an unexpected delicacy, piecing the puzzle together as metaphors of repair and renewal danced in his mind. Cressida watched from the doorway, her arms crossed but her expression softened by a flicker of warmth. "You wield power like a blade," she whispered later, as the children slept in their slumbering innocence, "but tenderness suits you better." Her words lingered, electric in their simplicity, brushing against unspoken longings neither dared name. But beneath these tender interactions, fears and insecurities twisted quietly. Cressida doubted herself constantly, the memory of early struggles with the twins' frail health a scar on her confidence. "I mended their fevers with herbs and hymns," she confessed one night over the hum of the stove, "but what if their true kin deem me unworthy?" Roderick, staring into the darkened fire, said nothing, though his thoughts were a tempest of guilt and fear. Losing them, or failing them, was a terror that clawed at him, stoking protective instincts that hovered dangerously close to possessiveness. Secrets hovered in the corners like ghosts. Roderick's subtle communications with his network, monitoring whispers of intrigue from the outside world, contrasted with Cressida's hidden journal, each entry chronicling milestones of love and care she poured into the twins. Every note, every observation, was a quiet testament to her devotion, a devotion Roderick could feel in every brush of her hand, in every tender word she offered. And yet, the world outside was not quiet. Etienne's missives hinted at shadowed figures circling the enclave, their intent malevolent. In that tension of desire and dread, Roderick realized that Cressida was more than a guardian. She was the anchor he had sought without knowing it, the one constant in a life defined by loss and vigilance. The emotional stakes rose gradually, subtly weaving empathy and trust into something neither could fully articulate. One dawn, as the first light spilled across the chalet, Cressida sketched by candlelight, her pencil tracing lines that captured not just faces but essence. Roderick approached silently, his presence filling the room with a heat that contrasted the crisp morning. "Your art captures essences I cannot name," he murmured, his voice low, almost a purr, vibrating against her skin. She flushed, pencil trembling slightly in her hand, the intimacy of the moment weighted with possibility, and shadowed by the secrets each held, as sacred and dangerous as any weapon. In those lingering glances, the unspoken acknowledgment of attraction and uncharted desire grew palpable. Each shared meal, each lesson with the twins, each quiet moment of vulnerability carved away pieces of Roderick's stoic armor, while Cressida found strength in his presence, a paradoxical mix of intimidation and comfort. The stage was set, not for ease or certainty, but for a tension simmering with potential, love tempered by fear, devotion shadowed by the past, and a connection that neither could afford to ignore. The fragile stillness of midnight shattered like glass. Smoke curled through the chalet, acrid and suffocating, carrying with it the unmistakable stench of malice. Roderick bolted upright from his makeshift vigil on the threadbare settee, senses blazing like wildfire. He detected the invaders before they even struck, not men, but predators cloaked in human flesh, their auras sickly with wrought and hired vengeance. Every fiber of his being screamed alert, centuries of instinct and alpha dominance surged to the fore. Glass splintered in the parlor, flames licking at curtains as masked figures stormed the sanctuary. Their weapons glinted with alloys that burned the air, each strike carrying intent to destroy what Roderick cherished most. Cressida jolted awake, her heart hammering as instinct propelled her toward the twins' chamber. She scooped Peregrine into one arm and Serafina into the other, their terrified whimpers pressing against her chest. "Stay behind me," Roderick commanded, his voice a low growl vibrating with authority, his frame rigid with coiled energy. He positioned himself like a living barricade, muscles taut, eyes scanning with lethal precision. The lead intruder leapt forward, hissing, "The air's end tonight, pretender." His blade caught Roderick's flank, a searing pain that erupted like fire across his skin. But it was nothing ordinary. The wound hissed unnaturally, as if the blade itself had been forged to pierce his kind. The alpha's lips curled in a snarl, fury blazing hotter than pain. Then, in a decision both terrifying and protective, Roderick revealed a fraction of his truth. Bones audibly cracked and reshaped, for erupting in midnight waves as he transformed into a colossal lupin guardian. His roar split the night, a sound both majestic and primal, reverberating through the chalet timbers. Cressida froze, breath caught in her throat, staring at the towering beast whose silver eyes radiated recognition, dominance, and protection. The twins, though trembling, pressed against her with an unspoken calm, as if they instinctively knew the creature's allegiance. Adrenaline ignited something fierce in Cressida. She seized a nearby hearth poker, swinging it with calculated ferocity, striking down an intruder. Each motion radiated maternal fire, a protective instinct honed by days of quiet devotion now unleashed. What are you?" she gasped, disbelief and awe mingling in her voice. Roderick moved with ruthless precision, teeth and claws rending, muscles coiling and snapping as he neutralized the remaining attackers. Within moments, the fray ended. Gasping and bruised, he reverted to human form, his torso marked with wounds that began knitting visibly before Cressida's astonished eyes. The revelation sank in like ice. These were not random marauders. Their insignia tied them directly to Roderick's estranged kin, a faction whose motives were buried in old betrayals and ancient rivalries. The shadow of conspiracy reached deeper than anyone could have guessed. Before they could process, a low drone vibrated through the night, the sound of Etienne's reinforcements, sleek craft touching down in concealed glades. Roderick guided them swiftly, ushering Cressida and the twins into the craft. As the engines roared, lifting them into the cold night sky, he reached for her hand, gripping it with a fierceness that mirrored his protectiveness and his unspoken fear. "We are guardians of ancient pacts, Cressida," he admitted, voice raw with urgency and vulnerability. "The twins carry that legacy. I cannot lose you now." Cressida's fingers tightened around his. For the first time, she felt the weight of the truth settle between them, the peril, the history, and the undeniable spark that had ignited in their shared struggle. The craft cut through the darkness, carrying them toward Roderick's fortified domain, every heartbeat a reminder that the night had irrevocably changed them. The inciting incident had done more than awaken danger, it had forged a bond, unbreakable and smoldering, tempered in fire, blood, and the promise of passions yet to be realized. The fragile stillness of midnight shattered like glass. Smoke curled through the chalet, acrid and suffocating, carrying with it the unmistakable stench of malice. Roderick bolted upright from his makeshift vigil on the threadbare settee, senses blazing like wildfire. He detected the invaders before they even struck, not men, but predators cloaked in human flesh, their auras sickly with wrought and hired vengeance. Every fiber of his being screamed alert, centuries of instinct and alpha dominance surged to the fore. Glass splintered in the parlor, flames licking at curtains as masked figures stormed the sanctuary. Their weapons glinted with alloys that burned the air, each strike carrying intent to destroy what Roderick cherished most. Cressida jolted awake, her heart hammering as instinct propelled her toward the twins' chamber. She scooped Peregrine into one arm and Serafina into the other, their terrified whimpers pressing against her chest. "Stay behind me," Roderick commanded, his voice a low growl vibrating with authority, his frame rigid with coiled energy. He positioned himself like a living barricade, muscles taut, eyes scanning with lethal precision. The lead intruder leapt forward, hissing, "The air's end tonight, pretender." His blade caught Roderick's flank, a searing pain that erupted like fire across his skin. But it was nothing ordinary. The wound hissed unnaturally, as if the blade itself had been forged to pierce his kind. The Alpha's lips curled in a snarl, fury blazing hotter than pain. Then, in a decision both terrifying and protective, Roderick revealed a fraction of his truth. Bones audibly cracked and reshaped, for erupting in midnight waves as he transformed into a colossal lupin guardian. His roar split the night, a sound both majestic and primal, reverberating through the chalet timbers. Cressida froze, breath caught in her throat, staring at the towering beast whose silver eyes radiated recognition, dominance, and protection. The twins, though trembling, pressed against her with an unspoken calm, as if they instinctively knew the creature's allegiance. Adrenaline ignited something fierce in Cressida. She seized a nearby hearth poker, swinging it with calculated ferocity, striking down an intruder. Each motion radiated maternal fire, a protective instinct honed by days of quiet devotion now unleashed. What are you?" she gasped, disbelief and awe mingling in her voice. Roderick moved with ruthless precision, teeth and claws rending, muscles coiling and snapping as he neutralized the remaining attackers. Within moments, the fray ended. Gasping and bruised, he reverted to human form, his torso marked with wounds that began knitting visibly before Cressida's astonished eyes. The revelation sank in like ice. These were not random marauders. Their insignia tied them directly to Roderick's estranged kin, a faction whose motives were buried in old betrayals and ancient rivalries. The shadow of conspiracy reached deeper than anyone could have guessed. Before they could process, a low drone vibrated through the night, the sound of Etienne's reinforcements, sleek craft touching down in concealed glades. Roderick guided them swiftly, ushering Cressida and the twins into the craft. As the engines roared, lifting them into the cold night sky, he reached for her hand, gripping it with a fierceness that mirrored his protectiveness and his unspoken fear. "We are guardians of ancient pacts, Cressida," he admitted, voice raw with urgency and vulnerability. "The twins carry that legacy. I cannot lose you now." Cressida's fingers tightened around his. For the first time, she felt the weight of the truth settle between them, the peril, the history, and the undeniable spark that had ignited in their shared struggle. The craft cut through the darkness, carrying them toward Roderick's fortified domain, every heartbeat a reminder that the night had irrevocably changed them. The inciting incident had done more than awaken danger. It had forged a bond, unbreakable and smoldering, tempered in fire, blood, and the promise of passions yet to be realized. In the twisting corridors of Roderick's ancestral stronghold, a daunting amalgam of Gothic spires and modern fortifications perched amid the misted Scottish highlands, tension thickened like storm clouds. The estate hummed with life and secrets, the clink of armor in the halls, muted whispers behind tapestries, and the faint metallic tang of alchemical instruments in the laboratories. Cressida, in her simple garb and practical boots, moved like a ripple of contrast through the ornate, gilded world of the pack. Whispers followed her, mortal interloper, fragile thread in eternal lineage, words meant to unsettle, yet she bore them with quiet resolve, determined to shield the twins while navigating this alien hierarchy. Roderick, ever vigilant, assigned loyal sentinels to her protection, his commands sharp and absolute. Every glance he cast carried weight, every motion suggested authority and unspoken caution. Yet despite his meticulous oversight, small disruptions hinted at hidden threats. A misplaced family heirloom here, a sabotaged ritual ingredient there, subtle sabotage in the kitchens, all whispers of dissent rising from within. It became clear that danger was not only external, it lurked in familiar faces, hidden behind loyalty masks. Amid these fractures, bonds formed and deepened. Peregrine and Seraphina's laughter bounced through marble corridors, a melody that seemed to weaken Roderick's rigid facade. He taught them bits of ancient lore through games, stories woven with lessons about courage, honor, and survival. Moments of tenderness emerged unexpectedly, a finger brushing a tiny hand as he guided Seraphina through a cipher, or leaning over Peregrine's shoulder to correct a knot in a spellbinding puzzle. Cressida watched, sometimes incredulous, sometimes touched. These glimpses revealed a side of Roderick few ever glimpsed, a vulnerability beneath the Alpha's impenetrable exterior. Cressida herself was evolving in ways she hadn't anticipated. Immersed in the estate's archives, she deciphered runes and texts thought impenetrable to outsiders. Her keen mind unraveled patterns and secrets that had eluded centuries of the Pack's elders, earning them grudging respect. One moonlit night, as they wandered the garden labyrinth together, Roderick's hand brushed hers, a subtle, electric contact that lingered far too long to be accidental. He admitted softly, almost reluctantly, "You see patterns where we see tradition." Their proximity stoked unspoken desires, a silent acknowledgement of connection yet to be named. Obstacles multiplied with insidious precision. Septimus, Roderick's silver-tongued uncle, sowed discord with quiet insinuations, questioning both the twins' lineage and Cressida's influence. At a formal banquet, Vivian LeClaire, a rival clanswoman of impeccable pedigree, struck with venom cloaked in civility, a fleeting bloom in an eternal forest, she murmured, her gaze slicing at Cressida's humanity. Roderick's protective instincts flared, his arms circled Cressida possessively, his sharp retort carrying authority that silenced whispers, yet the encounter planted seeds of doubt, leaving Cressida acutely aware of the fragility of her position. Emotional tension spiraled in both quiet and volatile ways. Nights spent in the library or on the battlements brought them closer. Roderick revealed the aching void left by Genevieve, confessing moments of weakness that allowed Cressida to see the man beneath the Alpha. Their dialogues, laden with vulnerability, were tempered with passion's undertow, charged glances, and lingering touches that neither dared fully name. A red herring, an expertly forged missive suggesting her complicity in the twins' earlier abduction, exploded into a confrontation in the solarium, the heated exchange culminating in a near-kiss that left them breathless and raw with unacknowledged longing. Meanwhile, the Pack's council convened, insisting on proofs of lineage and allegiance, their scrutiny a looming shadow over the fragile stability of the estate. Every decision Cressida made, every defensive act, was weighed against suspicion and tradition. And yet, with each challenge, her bond with Roderick grew, from necessity to profound connection, a tether born of mutual trust and shared danger. Outside, the highlands stirred with unseen forces. Shadowed figures lingered at the estate's periphery, their intent malevolent, hinting that the trials were far from over. The horizon darkened with the promise of upheaval, and the weight of legacy, loyalty, and love pressed against them with relentless inevitability. In this crucible of desire and distrust, Cressida and Roderick had to navigate a maze of threats both human and supernatural, their fates inextricably intertwined as the stage for the next conflict was set. Would you stand firm against such ancient prejudices, betrayals, and conspiracies, knowing your heart and the lives of innocents rested in the balance? Share your thoughts in the comments. The grand chamber of the stronghold, usually a sanctuary of tradition and ritual, had transformed into a crucible of suspicion and fury. Torchlight flickered across the stone walls, casting elongated shadows over sigils of ancestral power that seemed to watch with silent judgment. The air was thick with incense and tension, whispers of the gathered pack punctuated by the occasional creak of ancient timbers. The lineage tribunal, a ceremony designed to affirm bloodlines and stabilize authority, became the stage for a revelation that would fracture loyalties and ignite passions alike. As elders traced their scrutiny over the twins, measuring their essences against the sacred rites, Septimus rose from the council dais. His smile was a venomous crescent, sharp as the dagger concealed beneath his robes. From his grasp, ancient scrolls unfurled, curling like serpents in the candlelight. "These whelps," he intoned, voice dripping with calculated contempt, "bear the taint of human rearing. Unfit for our eternal throne." The words fell like ice upon the chamber, hearts seized, eyes widened. Septimus's confession cut deeper than any weapon. He revealed his partial culpability in Genevieve's demise, twisting his past actions into a blade aimed at Roderick's authority. Years of ambition, jealousy, and meticulous plotting coalesced in that moment, exposing a conspiracy spanning decades, one meant to destabilize the very foundation of Roderick's line. Shock reverberated through the council. Murmurs rippled like a dark tide, and the pack's loyalty wavered, caught between respect for tradition and awe of Roderick's demonstrated power. Cressida, standing at the chamber's center beside the twins, felt the full weight of vulnerability crash upon her. Her role as guardian, protector, and surrogate family was openly questioned. "You are but a custodian," Septimus spat, eyes narrowing, "a mortal veil over our purity." Her stomach twisted, a storm of indignation, fear, and defiance boiling within. Yet Roderick's presence loomed, a fortress of dominance and raw magnetism, shifting the balance in her favor. The stakes skyrocketed. To defend Cressida, to safeguard the twins, Roderick stepped forward, his aura radiating authority. Every alpha instinct ignited. "She is under my aegis, my choice, my claim." The declaration was more than protection, it was a binding, a claim that carried both political weight and unspoken passion. Whispers of scandal met the announcement, yet the pack could not deny the force behind it. Cressida's heart thundered, a mix of fear, exhilaration, and a fluttering heat that came from his nearness. After the tribunal, the air outside the chamber burned with tension. Roderick pulled Cressida aside, fingers gripping her face with controlled urgency, thumbs brushing her cheekbones as if to anchor her in the chaos. "You are no veil, you are my anchor," he growled, voice deep with passion and unshakable resolve. Their lips met in a searing kiss, the world around them fading. The moment was both declaration and protection, a tether forged in fire and shared danger. Her pulse raced, mingling fear of the pack's wrath with the forbidden thrill of proximity to a man whose power eclipsed everything she had known. Yet the revelations were far from over. Septimus, ever calculating, invoked a ritual challenge, a nocturnal trial designed to test Cressida's worthiness. Failure would strip her of protection, her claim to the twins, and her place within the pack. The terms were clear: success meant recognition, respect, and survival; failure, exile, or worse. Shadows lengthened as the chamber emptied, leaving Cressida with the weight of impending tests pressing on her chest like stone. In the aftermath, alliances and desires collided. Vulnerabilities were laid bare: the twins' future, her own mortal fragility, Roderick's scars and fears, and each moment became a spark, igniting both trust and an unspoken longing that neither dared fully name. The narrative pivoted sharply. The sanctuary of familiarity was gone, replaced by the precarious precipice of trials, conspiracies, and passions ignited under pressure. The pack teetered on the brink, and the story's axis had shifted, moving inexorably toward darker nights, harder choices, and a crucible that would define both love and legacy. The stronghold, a fortress of stone and shadow, had never felt so oppressive. Every corridor Cressida traversed seemed endless, twisting like a labyrinth designed to test the mind as well as the body. The flicker of torchlight cast monstrous silhouettes against the walls, reflections of her own fear magnified in polished obsidian panels. The ritual challenge loomed over her like a dark prophecy, a solitary vigil in the forbidden glens, where legends whispered of ancient beasts that hungered for intruders. Each step she took echoed with the possibility of doom, and every gust of wind carried the faint, eerie whisper of Septimus's scorn, "A mortal has no place among immortals." Cressida's thoughts swirled with the faces of the twins, their innocent eyes wide with trust and dependence. Peregrine's small hands clutching hers, Seraphina's tentative smile in the morning light, memories she clung to as anchors against despair. Nights had been sleepless, her mind replaying visions of losing them, or worse, watching them be molded by the pack's unyielding traditions. Mirrors along the corridors reflected a woman frayed at the edges, eyes hollowed with worry, hands trembling against her protective wards, and a heart heavy with responsibility that stretched far beyond her mortal limits. Far above, on the cold, wind-lashed battlements, Roderick prowled like a predator in a cage. His instincts screamed at him to intervene, yet the laws of the pack forbade his interference, binding him to a torment more painful than any blade. He pounded the stone parapets with fists of frustration, the echo carrying across the keep, unanswered. Each whispered word of Cressida's doubt reached him like a strike, Vivian's poisonous insinuations, the fear that Cressida might falter, the faint suggestion that leaving might preserve the twins' future. "I cannot watch you shatter," he admitted in private, pressing a kiss to her temple in a stolen moment, the heat of his confession a fleeting shield against the encroaching darkness. But duty and law loomed larger than desire, and with every heartbeat, the gnawing fear of loss consumed him. Cressida's preparation was ritual and prayer. She donned her simple, warded garb, each stitch a sigil of protection, each loop of cord a blessing against unseen forces. The amulet Roderick pressed into her palm pulsed faintly, a tether to his strength, a promise of presence even when he could not be by her side. Her fingers lingered on the cool metal, grounding herself against the storm of fear that raged inside. The twins' voices echoed in her memory, "Will you leave us, Maman?" She had whispered reassurances, yet they rang hollow even to her own ears, drowned beneath the rising tide of dread. As twilight bled into night, the glens awaited. Mist coiled like living tendrils over the frozen undergrowth, the silhouettes of ancient oaks reaching with skeletal fingers. The air was thick with foreboding, the faintest snap of a branch or rustle of fur set her nerves ablaze. Every shadow seemed to harbor eyes, every breeze carried whispers of danger. Alone, yet under the weight of generations, she stepped into the abyss, heart thrumming like a drumbeat of defiance and despair. The final parting with Roderick had been raw with emotion, tear-streaked faces, trembling hands, promises made with unsteady lips. "Survive, for us," he had urged, eyes burning with fierce desperation, hands lingering on her shoulders as if to push courage into her very bones. She had nodded, swallowing the lump of fear, yet the sensation of isolation hit like a tidal wave once the stronghold's torches vanished behind her. The glen swallowed her form in thick mist, her figure dissolving into a shroud of silver-gray fog. The wind whistled through hollowed trees like a chorus of warning. Distant howls carried over the frozen terrain, neither entirely beast nor entirely spectral, echoing the abyss she now faced. Each footstep forward was a battle against the crushing weight of despair, every heartbeat a reminder of the stakes, the twins, Roderick, herself, and the delicate thread upon which their fates now hung. In this darkest hour, hope felt fragile, almost inconsequential, yet it persisted, an ember against the storm, a pulse of defiance against inevitable night. The journey ahead was uncertain, treacherous, and merciless. But as Cressida advanced, her resolve crystallized, to survive, to protect, and to face whatever ancient trials awaited in the moonlit glens, even if it meant confronting the shadows of her deepest fears alone. The glens stretched before Cressida like a realm suspended between shadow and mist, each gnarled tree and frost-laden bramble both a barrier and a guide. Her breath came in shallow bursts, visible as ghostly clouds in the icy air, yet each exhale carried determination. The solitude that had once crushed her now sharpened her senses. She felt the amulet's faint pulse against her chest, a steady, almost heartbeat-like rhythm. It was more than a token from Roderick, it was a tether to him, a silent reminder that even in isolation, she was not alone. Its hum resonated with hidden wards embedded in the glens, guiding her along safe paths invisible to the untrained eye. "I am no prey," she whispered to the winds, her voice trembling but unwavering. Each word was a mantra, anchoring her courage in a sea of fear. The glens themselves seemed alive, illusions folding and shifting, trying to mislead her, yet Cressida's mind, honed by years of maternal vigilance, pieced together the patterns. Hidden ravines revealed footholds, streams glimmered with wards of protection, and ancient markers she had once only read about in the estate's archives now lit her way. She realized the forest was a crucible testing her resolve, but also a proving ground for her latent power. Memories surged like lightning, the twins' laughter echoing down the corridors of her humble chalet, Roderick's gaze lingering with unspoken longing, the warmth of his hands when fear gripped her. These recollections fused with instinct, forging an unbreakable determination. She pivoted from hunter to hunter, activating the amulet's latent ward. A pulse of soft luminescence radiated outward, disrupting ethereal trackers and unraveling the invisible thread Septimus had planted to ensnare her. Shadows recoiled as if aware of a new authority asserting itself. The encoded message within the artifact glimmered, a cipher only Cressida could decipher, Roderick's guidance hidden in subtle patterns. It revealed Septimus's violations of pack law, clandestine rituals, attempts to manipulate the twins' inheritance, and designs to seize power under the guise of tradition. With every revelation, clarity sharpened, anger igniting a fire she had not felt since her early days as guardian. The path forward was no longer uncertain, she had a purpose beyond mere survival, to reclaim justice, expose treachery, and protect the children whose lives had become entwined with her own. Hope surged alongside a newfound mastery of her own latent abilities. She drew on her maternal intuition and the subtle teachings Roderick had passed during fleeting moments of intimacy, channeling both into a precise awareness of her surroundings. Each step through the mist became purposeful, every shadow examined for threat or opportunity. Bonds of loyalty and love, previously simmering beneath layers of fear, now burned brightly within her, silent vows to protect, to endure, and to confront the darkness head-on. By the time she emerged into a clearing illuminated by moonlight, the turning point had arrived. No longer prey, no longer hesitant, Cressida stood ready to challenge the manipulations of Septimus and the pack elders who had been swayed by deceit. The glens, once a place of despair, had become a crucible of empowerment. With every heartbeat, she felt the convergence of courage, purpose, and love, knowing the trials ahead would demand all she had, but also all she was capable of giving. The stage was set. The hunter had become the arbiter, and the shadowed paths of the highlands would soon bear witness to a reckoning where courage eclipsed despair, and the bonds of heart and family would blaze like beacons through the night. The moon hung high over the glens, silver light glinting off frost-laden branches, casting a spectral glow over the clearing where destiny would be decided. Mud streaked Cressida's cheeks, her breaths ragged but steady, heart hammering like war drums in her chest. Across from her, Septimus loomed, transformed into a monstrous hybrid, a grotesque fusion of man and beast, sinews coiled like steel springs, claws glinting with a predatory sheen, eyes burning with triumph and malice. The air vibrated with his rage, the very ground seeming to recoil under his presence. The first strike came in a blur, a clawed hand swiping with lethal intent, and Cressida reacted with instinct honed through weeks of peril. She rolled aside, the amulet on her chest flaring with sudden luminescence, disorienting the hybrid and scattering illusions of phantom attackers that Septimus had conjured. Sparks of hope lanced through her chest as she realized the artifact could do more than protect, it could expose truth. With deliberate precision, she activated its recording essence, a hidden function that captured Septimus's every word and deed. His snarled confession cut through the night, "I orchestrated the blaze that claimed Genevieve, to purge weakness from our line." The revelation roared through hidden channels to the distant council, ensuring his treachery would be broadcast and codified, unassailable. Septimus, enraged and panicked, lunged with a forbidden blade, a jagged artifact meant to sever both flesh and mystical bonds. Cressida's mind raced, weaving knowledge of the glen's wards with her own maternal intuition. She baited him toward a concealed ravine lined with ancestral runes. As he fell into the trap, the wards flared to life, ethereal chains binding him just long enough to prevent further violence, shimmering bands of light flickering like spectral shackles. From the tree line, Roderick descended with predatory grace, massive lupin form coiling in motion like a storm made flesh. His claws tore into the hybrid's flank, muscles slamming bone with explosive force. A symphony of growls and snapping jaws reverberated through the clearing, punctuated by Cressida's rising heartbeat as she watched justice unfold. Each blow Roderick landed carried the weight of vengeance and protection, a culmination of loyalty, love, and righteous fury. As Septimus collapsed, trapped and defeated, the clearing's tension dissolved into a chorus of triumph. The pack's howls, once threatening, shifted into celebration, echoing across the misty glens. Cressida ran into Roderick's embrace, their reunion fierce and tender, bodies pressed together amid the ruins of deceit. Relief washed over her, a potent mixture of exhaustion and catharsis, as she felt the magnitude of what had been accomplished, not just survival, but the restoration of honor, family, and trust. In the aftermath, bonds solidified with unbreakable strength. The twins, peeking from behind protective guardians, witnessed the culmination of courage and loyalty, learning that resilience and love could triumph even against monstrous betrayal. The glens, scarred yet radiant in the moonlight, bore silent witness to the reckoning. Justice had been served, treachery unmasked, and a new order emerged, one built not on fear or rigid tradition, but on truth, courage, and the unyielding bond between Cressida and Roderick. Amid the echoes of victory, the sense of finality was tempered by hope, a promise that the horrors of the past would no longer dictate the future. Dawn spilled gold across the highland peaks, catching on the restored spires of Roderick's ancestral stronghold, where stone walls bore the scars of conflict now softened by the morning light. The halls, once tense with whispered plots and shadowed glances, echoed instead with laughter, music, and the bustling rhythms of life renewed. Servants, sentinels, and scholars moved with purpose, their tasks infused with a sense of hope that had seemed impossible weeks before. Roderick, his own wounds healed and the weight of vengeance lifted, knelt before Cressida in the sun-drenched atrium. In his hands was a luminous heirloom band, its subtle glow reflecting not just his lineage but the shared trials they had endured. "Be my eternal consort, guardian of our legacy," he murmured, voice low yet resonant, carrying the gravity of battles fought and trust earned. Tears shimmered in Cressida's eyes as she accepted, her fingers entwining with his. Their union, witnessed by the twins, was celebrated not as mere ceremony but as the affirmation of love forged in fire, intellect, and courage. Peregrine and Seraphina's gleeful laughter rang like chimes, their early shifter traits now a source of wonder rather than fear, a symbol of hope for a new generation. Vivian's exile, a final severing of malice from the clan, brought closure to lingering resentment. Yet the true transformation lay in the subtle, enduring shifts. Cressida, once a mortal outsider, now guided ancient rites with compassion, tempering strict traditions with empathy, ensuring that wisdom and humanity walked hand in hand. Alliances once fragile were strengthened, bonds forged between clans old and new, bridging worlds and blending heritage with heart. Evenings became sanctuaries of quiet fulfillment. Roderick and Cressida would sit by flickering hearths, the twins nestled between them, recounting the day's triumphs and the mundane joys of life finally unthreatened. Cressida's artwork, her luminous renderings of the glens, the twins' shifts, and ancestral spirits, adorned the stronghold, a permanent testament to resilience, love, and the melding of mortal and immortal worlds. Roderick's enterprises, once driven solely by power, now thrived under ethical pacts and partnerships informed by Cressida's insight, a reflection of growth and harmony. The echoes of past battles lingered only as reminders, lessons etched into memory, while the present radiated the promise of enduring peace. Bonds that had been tested in fire and shadow now glowed with unshakable strength, a symphony of loyalty, love, and redemption. The stronghold, its walls scarred yet resilient, mirrored the family it housed, steadfast, evolving, and unbreakable. As the sun rose higher, casting warmth over the highland peaks, it illuminated a future ripe with possibility. The tale of fierce bonds, redemption, and triumph over treachery concluded not in silence but in vibrant life, the laughter of children, the pride of a united pack, and the quiet, radiant joy of two souls who had found each other amidst the storm. The story closed with a promise, that courage, love, and unwavering devotion could turn even the harshest trials into a legacy worth passing down through generations.